Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to extend our very welcome and gratitude to our distinguished speaker, Prof. Paula Lackie, Fulbright Specialist Information Technology Services, Carleton College, USA, Dr. Wahida Muhammad Zain from UITM, Prof. Dr. Abdurrahman Ahlan, Dean of KICT, Madam Yusrina Abu Bakar, IIUM Chief Librarian, fellow librarians, Prof. Dr. Murni Mahmud, Deputy Dean of Postgraduate Office, Associate Professor Dr. Lili Marziana Abdullah, Deputy Dean of Academic Affairs, Dr. Sharkawi Hamza, Deputy Dean of Student Affairs, Dr. Nur Azura Zakaria, Head of Responsible Research and Innovation, Associate Professor Technologist Dr. Zahida Zulkifli, Head of Department of Library and Information Science, Dr. Muhammad Khairul Azmi Hassan, Head of Department of Information System, Dr. Amir Atif Amir Hussein, Head of Department of Computer Science, Dr. Madiha Sheikh Abdul Aziz, Head of Department of Center of IT Advancement, department members, and to all respected ladies and gentlemen who are present here today, physically and also online. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Nur Hidayah binti Muhammad Saleh, the President of Library and Information Science Student Assembly, LISA 2022 and 2023, your MC for today. Welcome to the Department of Library and Information Science Industrial Talk Series. In this event, we will be presenting to you a talk on what is open about open science. Before we begin, let us seek the blessings from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala for our memorable event this evening with the recitation of dua that will be led by Brother Muhammad Al-Fatih Muhammad Nubli. فَلْيَتَفَضَّلْ مَشْكُورًا.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin Sadiqul Wa'adil Amin. Subhanaka la ilma lana innaka antal alimul hakim. La fahma lana illa ma fahamtana innaka antal azizul hakim. Wa arina al-haqqa haqqa warzuqna ittiba'ah. Wa arina al-batila batila warzuqna ijtinabah. Waj'alna mimman yastami'una al-qawla fayattabi'una ahsanah. Wa adkhilna bi rahmatika fi ibadika as-salihin. Allah, praise be to you, Lord of the world, and prayers and peace be upon our Master Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the truthful and trustworthy promises. Teach us what benefit us and benefit us with what you taught us, and increase our knowledge and show us the truth as truth and grant us to follow it, and show us falsehood as falsehood and grant us to avoid it, and make us among those who listen to the saying and follow the best of it. Enter us with your mercy among your pious servant. Allahumma ya Rahman, on this blessing evening in the conjunction with the program What is Open about Open Science, we beseech thee and grateful toward you in favor of all the infinite blessings to us. We seek your blessing for a flawless progress of this event from the beginning till the end. We seek your guidance to steer clear of the event that would detrimental the progress of this event. Ya Rahimu Ya Alim, give us mercy from your present and shape us for us right conduct in our pledge. With your tawfiq and hidayah, please guide International Islamic University to harmony, glory, and prosperity in this world and the hereafter. Make us a responsible intellectual, grant us with a valuable knowledge that will be beneficial to mankind. Make us your righteous servant that follow your command and neglect the sinful acts. Ya Ghafoor, Ya Shakur, please forgive us for our wrongdoing. Grant us sustenance which is good and deeds which are acceptable. Help us to remember you, to thank you, and to worship you in the best manner. ربنا اغفر لنا وأنت خير الغافرين وارزقنا وأنت خير الرازقين وارحمنا وأنت خير الراحمين وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Amin, Amin, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Thank you to Brother Muhammad Al-Fatih for the recitation of Dua just now. Esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, now I would like to invite Prof. Dr. Abdul Rahman Ahlan, the Dean of KICT, to give his welcoming remarks. Please welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good afternoon. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome all to this industrial talk organized by the Department of Information, Department of Library and Information Science, together with Lisa. Okay, and I'd like to also welcome those who have attended physically, and also perhaps some they are attending online. I think I would like to also welcome our distinguished guest, Professor Paula Lackie. Okay, excuse me. I think we have the opportunity to have some discussion in the morning, and I think this session will be beneficial to us, especially when we are trying to understand what is open science and how open is open. Because I think in the case of locating information and also finding where the data resides, I think this has been all along our pain points. Okay, as researchers, as sometimes students, sometimes administrators in this university, and it's not only a problem that our institution face, but it's a common problem also elsewhere. So hopefully, with the information, the knowledge that we're going to gain from the talk that will be given by our distinguished professor, then we can know how we can help to improve so that we can participate in what is open science. I think it has to start with and advocating the idea of what is open science, try to understand it. Okay, because we want to make sure that if we are doing research and in learning things, we want to mature in the process. Okay, we don't want to always repeat the same mistake again and again, and trying to repeat things that have already been done by other people in the past. Okay, so with open science, we hope that is going to be a new practice, a new norms for us, so that we can be more open. Okay, and we can be more comfortable, because sometimes when we talk about open science, trying to share things, trying to share data, trying to share methodologies, trying to share, the processes, that we have designed for our work. Sometimes some people can be a bit skeptical, okay, in terms of the privacy, in terms of, abuse by others. So we want to get rid of those, skepticisms, by hopefully understanding better what is open science is all about. Okay, so I don't want to take too a longer time, because already we're starting late now. Again, I would like to welcome everyone, especially our distinguished guests, to our kuliah, and hopefully everyone will benefit from this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Dr. Abdul Rahman Ahlan, for the wonderful speech. I hope everyone is now eager to know what is open about open science. Therefore, without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to our moderator today, Dr. Nur Saada binti Matnoor, to begin our talk today. Please welcome. And also, we would like to call upon Prof. Paula Lackie to the front to start the talk. Please welcome.
Yeah, let's start with that one.
Assalamualaikum and good afternoon all. Honorable Dean of KICT, Professor T.S. Dr. Abrahman Ahlan, all Deputy Deans, our respected HOD, Dr. T.S. Dr. Zahida Zulkifli, and all HODs, distinguished speaker, Prof. Paula Lackie, sorry.
No problem.
Colleagues, students, and all participants, welcome to our program today. Distinguished speaker, colleagues, students, and all participants, ladies and gentlemen, I am Professor Adah Matnur. It's pleased to be your moderator for today's talk under the title TLRS Talk Series, What is Open About Open Science. So, before we begin, okay, let me quickly introduce to you about the speaker. Okay, so Prof. Paula is very active in data and data correlation organization, principally IA, SSIST, and ICPSR, serving many roles at both institutions, including 6 years as chair of outreach, creating the international fellows programs to increase support for data professionals in underrepresented areas for the world. So, Prof. Paula graduates work in political science, which is in international relations, was from the University of Southern California in 1993. Her PhD research was on governing virtual communities. Okay, she also did postgraduate work in semiconductor trade and crisis management at Claremont Graduate School, completed the Coro Foundation Fellows Program in Public Affairs, St. Louis, and has completed a variety of continuing education courses throughout her time at Carleton. Is it okay?
Oh, yes. It's closer.
So her current research interests include fostering a reproducible research data lifecycle mentality among new data scientists, exploring sustainable low-cost data capture processes for the small-scale researcher, pedagogical and technical context for the use and support of data in teaching and learning, keeping abreast of developments in data science education, data carpentry, wrangling, and data peace, and a lot more.
Hello.
So, Prof. Paula have a vast experiences in dealing with the management of data, and the latest one is the specialist in open science. Okay. All right. So before the talk begins, okay, let me tell you how this workshop will run. So firstly, okay, the speaker will deliver her talk for about 30 minutes, and after that, 15 minutes will be given for question and answer session. So if any one of you, okay, wants to ask question later during the Q&A session, please switch on the microphone and directly interact with the speaker. Okay, for those who joins this talk online, so you could possibly post your question through the chat box at the Zoom or YouTube. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, now with great pleasure, I would like to invite Prof. Lackie to deliver her much awaited talk on what is open about open science.
Okay, is this mic or not live? Okay, now it's on. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, first of all, for welcoming me here in your beautiful campus. I've learned so much already, listening to the different things that are going on, or the different programs and movements, and you're doing an astounding amount of work across the campus. And I know I've only seen a little bit of it. So I think that, first of all, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, whether you know very much about open science or you think you don't know about open science, I'm here to tell you that I think you do, actually. I think that you may be more ready than you realize. So let's go into it a little bit about what is this thing and what's so open about open science. Now, first of all, I want to know who are you so that I can talk directly to Pivar. If you could check into this, it's a Jamboard. If you've used Jamboard, it's a Google thing, straightforward. And all you need to do is, I recommend just using the sticky note button when you get there. Once it loads. There's a bunch of little ways you can put notes on the board. But the sticky note board is going to be the easiest. Yeah, and for everybody who's offline or out of the room. There's that. You can use your mobile device, or there should be a link in there as well, a regular link in the chat. Go ahead and use that. If they came late to the chat, they might need the link again. Think about I'm just wondering about, where are you coming from? Your students, say you're a student in what field? If you're a researcher, what researcher field are you in? If you're a librarian, what's your role in the library? Can you pull up the Jamboard, or are we getting there? And if it's too complicated, because we have people here, there, and everywhere, we can just use the microphones and the chat, Zoom chat. Are people able to get in? Looks like people are thinking. Yeah. If they're getting in. Now, my bet is we have one dean in the room, and we're going to have one file, one little card that says dean. And this is just an introduction. This is just an introduction to get you guys started to think about open science from your own perspective. I'll just play a little bit with Jamboard. You know what? I should just bring my laptop up here and I can look at it. Oh, it's going good. Is it going to work for you? Do you want to grab my laptop? Got some librarians, beginning librarians, student librarians. Psychology and ICT. ICT is information communication technology, which in this era is complicated.
Yeah, ICT is our backend.
So the whole group. Okay, got it. Yeah.
The whole group.
Oops, we got two. This is what a Jamboard does. It goes a little wild. Oh, we got an economics student, a lecturer. A lecturer in what? My friend, the lecturer out there, tell us what field you're lecturing in.
Johor is one of the state in Malaysia. So Johor is the local.
So someone is studying the people of Johor.
I know, I think maybe students from, we got students from Johor.
We just,
But stay here.
so, okay. Business administration. Business intelligence analytics, reference librarian. And a BBA student as business, probably,
Business administration.
okay. Mass communication, minoring in IT, so. Here's the thing, I'm seeing a lot of things in which, economics certainly does research, and business administration, there's often a lot of research in that. Let's talk a little bit about what is the interplay between open science and research. I think that that might be an area that's of interest. The words are being thrown around quite a lot. So research is a study of some specific topic that where you're trying to understand, you're trying to answer a question. You typically gather information, analyze the information, write up a report about that, what you figured out, and then you tell the world. That's research in a very basic nutshell. Open science, let's take that apart. I'm going to go to the science part first. No one's used the word science, as far as I can tell, on the Jamboard so far. Not a person here has said science. And so when you think open science, you probably think, well, that's not me. No one's saying they're a scientist here. And yet science is more than physics, chemistry, biology. Science includes the process of methodically examining a subject. So information science is a science because you're methodically analyzing information in some way, shape, or form. Computer science is a science because you're methodically processing some aspect of computer interaction, coding. You're studying something for a cause and effect. Now, that includes, the next question is open. So we talked about research, we talked about science, really basically. And now what is open? That's the question that I'm bringing to you, because it seems like a simple word. It's not closed. But what does it mean to be open about your science, about your research, about your activities as an academic? That's what I want people to think about more deeply. Because it is the openness is an emotional state, really. Openness is about every single individual who's thinking about how they're proceeding in the world, who's thinking about how they can gain knowledge and share it with others. Sharing, collaborating, being open about what you're trying to understand so that that information can be shared and grown. You can make a larger contribution if you can share across disciplines, across nations, across societies. So that's a very, very basic high level overview of what's open about open science. right? Let's go back to the slides. Anybody can Google what is open science, right? You can go out there and find out, look, there's a very concrete definition right here. Most of the time you'll see diagrams of what is open science, loaded with jargon. In fact, if you pull up a Google sheet, let's do it right now. Switch to a blank Google window and just Google images for what is open science. Because what's going on, just type right there, what is open science? And then when it pops up, we'll go to the images, right? Grab the images up there, right, the link at the top. Holy smokes, we got loads of them. We've got lots of different diagrams with specific meanings. A lot of times you'll see these diagrams repeated in different ways, subtle differences about them. And in the reality of it all, it's all of them. None of them are wrong. None of them are right. There's no organization that says, this is open science and this is all it is. It's all going to be based on what do you need? How can you interact with others? Open science includes using other people's data, using other people's articles to produce new knowledge for yourself. That's open science. Someone has shared stuff out in the universe, and you've been able to take advantage of that to make something better for yourself. And that something better might be writing a paper for tomorrow. You have already participated in open science when you have done that at a very small level. What I would like to see more of is not just sharing the articles, but sharing how did that person understand what their data was all about? What did they gather to create their knowledge? How did they gather it? Usually that information is condensed so deeply in an article that you can't really understand what that means. You need to have it, first you need to be very motivated to understand it because it's going to be a lot of reading. But the article gives a little description, and then if you're interested, you want to go further. As soon as you want to go further, we're talking open science, because you need to get into that article and then get into the articles that are surrounding it. Probably, ideally, these would be included as appendices, but they aren't always. So there are lots of networks out in the universe in which you will work with librarians to discover these networks. Librarians are your best friends when it means I need to find something. Librarians are all about finding that stuff on the internet. So it's command tab back to the slides, yeah. So what we want to do is say what I want to do. I want you to walk away from here going, okay, so I don't know what open science is exactly, because there is no exact answer. Open science is a frame of mind. It's an attitude. It's a way of exchanging your information with other information in the world that's honorable and has integrity. So that process takes practice. That process takes humility, because you might think you're not quite ready. And yet, if you have humility and you share your stuff with the world, you share your messy research process, you share your understanding of what's going on in your research process, someone might come along and say, oh my goodness, you're doing something that's very interesting to me. And I see I'm having the same problem you are. Maybe we can talk about it. Because it takes all of us globally to improve society. We need to work together for this. So it's the next one. One of the problems, like I said, so there are a number of places where you'll find people who say they know what open science is. They already know. They're so sure. Well, it's true for them. It doesn't mean it's true for your current experience. In healthcare data, for instance, in healthcare research, open science does not mean sharing your data completely 100% openly. Your metadata, yes. Your process, yes. Your methodology, yes. The code you wrote to analyze the data, yes. In areas in which you're studying maybe animal behavior, animals don't necessarily have rights to privacy, so animal behavior gets to be more public. And in that case, they could share all of the data. Everything's open, but it's not always everything. And there are also, another aspect I want to bring up right now is about how difficult it is to understand when the definitions are super vague. Like I've been talking in super generic, bland, normal terms about all this stuff. And the only way it's going to make sense to any of you is if you manage your stuff, if you manage your research process yourself, and in the entire time you're doing it, you're thinking about how can I make this transparent? Then it will become more clear to you, what does it mean to do open science? You have to actually do it to get the sense of it. Now, the things against that, of course, are nobody's got enough time for that. This paper is due in 3 weeks. I don't have time for that. In many cases, people don't have the motivation because they don't really care about what they're doing, possibly. That's dangerous, but whatever, what works is good. And the third one, there's more than 3 examples of why being open with your stuff is not enough. And then is that it's really hard to know, what does it mean to be open? When is it safe to have my data open? It's always safer if you aren't sure if your data are ethically shareable, then don't share it. It's safer to be protective of your subjects. If they're human subjects, you want to be protective of them. But you can be open about how you did what you did. You can be open about what those data represent. You can probably be open about summary statistics, aggregated stuff. Not always, it depends on cell size, but that's a minute point. So in the old days, a few years ago, it was all about, these are my data. Why would I ever share? I don't want you to have my stuff. It's my stuff. I made this. It's mine, mine, mine. Well, probably, let's say it's somebody who did a painstaking job of surveying 6,000 people in rural Bangladesh. It took an astounding amount of time to do this. They literally interviewed every single family in 3 villages in Bangladesh. Okay, so I happen to know this research intimately. But that person did not want to share because he had spent all of his time and effort doing this. Well, are those data his? Who owns that? Who owns the information? And is ownership even the way to think about it? There's 6,000 families in rural Bangladesh. That information is about them. Maybe each family owns their own information. Now, if he hoards it, if he holds it and doesn't share it, is that on him? Should he ask everyone? These are really difficult ethical questions, but they're questions that need to be addressed upfront and with honesty. As it turns out, he deposited his data in a public archive, and you now have access to those information if you would be interested in that area. It's an economic research study on happiness, which was really fun to combine happiness research with economics. And another piece of that was studying the impact of expats from Bangladesh sending money home to their families. What was the prestige in that behavior? So it's super important research for policy development in Bangladesh about exporting laborers, and what is the impact of that on the villages. So now those data are incredibly rich, very valuable. And they're publicly available through the Inter-University Consortium for Social and Political Research at the University of Michigan. That's called ICPSR. He's written several articles based on his own data, and now other people are using his data to write articles and citing him, which would never have happened if he hadn't shared. He came around and he decided, I need to share this stuff. It's too valuable, and there's no way I can do all this research myself. Let's go to the next. Now, we're gonna bring it home again. When you think about your own research, the work that you do you ever go find similar research before you start? Got some nodding heads. Looking right at you people in Zoom, are you nodding? Can't see you. Okay, if you ever search for someone else's research that's similar to what you're doing, you are already participating in a global conversation, a very slow conversation when it's done through journal articles. But it takes years to get a journal article out. By then, your information is really stale and old by the time your article comes out. So if you want to have a more rapid conversation, then you might want to find the article authors and communicate with them as well. Now you can have a real-time communication stream. And you could do that because they decided they could publish and you were able to find that article. So when you're going out there and you're finding the article, do you ever get better data? What did they base their analysis on? Have you thought about doing that ever? People in business administration typically need other people's data, certainly. Economics, certainly. Psychology, often. Political science, usually. As soon as you want someone else's data, now we're talking about another layer of complexity for what is open. Did they just give it to you? Did you have to ask them for it? What if they don't exist anymore? What if they've died? Now how do you find their data? That's challenging. But if you want data from the 50s, those authors are probably not with us any longer. So if you want to compare something specific about that happened in the 50s that happened and what's going on now, you've got an issue, the 1950s through the 2020s, and you've got an issue of where are those data? So this is where you'd want to probably work with a librarian and look through the citations of the article. The article is just an advertisement for that research. And if you can change your mindset as to from the article being the penultimate final thing to being instead just an advertisement for the really in-depth, rich material that created that article, that person processed through their gray matter to write an analysis. Now we're talking about knowledge development from information, right? So you have to read their footnotes and normalize citing data sources. Everyone must cite their data sources. That needs to be integrated into all education courses. Any class, any methods course, if you come across an article that does not cite the data upon which they've done their analysis, that's a hint that they're not really thorough. Do we trust them? We can trust them if they say, here are my data. This is how I did it. This is exactly what I did. Please have a look. It improves the integrity of the research when we share openly. And if you find something where there's a problem with the data or something funky has happened, something strange is going on, have compassion for that person and say, I think I found something that I don't understand. This happened to me years ago. We were working with data from the early 1990s, so it was just barely digitized. There was housing structure types across several cities. And the US government data indicated that about 10% of the population of a very major city in the south of the United States lived in caves. Like Batu Caves. It didn't make sense. 10% of a population in a flat desert lives in caves. I think there's a problem with these data. I took an undergraduate from rural Minnesota to discover a problem with US government data, and we brought it to their attention. Unfortunately, the response was, have you been to that town? We just went, oh, we're not gonna get through. It's a major city. There are no caves. No one is living in caves in Phoenix, Arizona. But and it took several iterations. The student had to give up, but I kept on, and when we fixed the data. But it's about perseverance and making sense and not believing everything you read. It needs to make sense. So that's a part of the discussion. So now the last thing that I want to say on this slide about when you're working with your own materials, keeping this really personal, when you're working with your own materials, have you ever had trouble finding that thing you wrote? You young students, in the last school you were in, you probably wrote some essays. Can you find them? What if that was something super important to you? Can you find those things you wrote when you were 16 years old? What happened to them? Oh, you saved them on that hard drive. What hard drive? The one your dad had. Okay. What did he do with it? Oh, he put it on a shelf. Which shelf? The one there in the sun, where it got baked for 3 years. Does it work? Is it now just a piece of metal and no information is on it anymore? So it's classic. It happens over and over and over again. The thing that I want you, if you learn nothing else from me, I want you to learn that open is personal. It was your motivation to follow principles that are sound research practices, that are sound data management practices, that are sound and open methodological practices. All of that is to help yourself first. If you can do it for yourself, then you can do it for your students, your friends. You can do it, think about this, do it for future you. Because current you is producing all kinds of material that future you might want. And you just don't know it yet. So curate, learn to manage your materials in ways that have metadata. Metadata is information about the thing, whatever it is, whatever your collection is. You've got a collection of articles or files you wrote, things you gathered for a paper you wrote. You just save it all forever? Probably not. I mean, if you do, you'll just have a whole lot of stuff. And how do you find the one thing that you're looking for? Because now you've got, you know, those 15 drafts of that one paper. How many of those drafts do you really need, right? So curate as you go, pick the things that you want to keep, tell yourself what they are in a standard format, name your files logically, name your files so that they make sense over time and out of place. So that if you find this file loose on a flash drive, you don't have to open and figure out what it is. Because folders and nested folders are going away as a thing. The cloud doesn't do folders that well. And the universe is moving into the cloud. So that's a future tip there. So in summary of this, it is follow principles that would help yourself. And when you can help yourself, you're already halfway to helping other people. So why not share? That's good enough. Yeah, well, I already went all over that, didn't I? So now let's talk about the reality of this. I was just a little preachy session on how great it is, but in reality, it's difficult, right? So let's go to another Jamboard and have a look think about why you don't share. What keeps in, what really is in your way? Read it. We're just gonna go over these, whatever your frustrations are. A little bit. And we can talk in the Q&A. Yeah, so we're going right into Q&A from here, so we can talk more about what are these frustrations and what can we do about them. So in reality, you can ask you can ask questions on this board as well, on the Jam board. You want to make that full screen? Can you make this full screen? I don't know if you can or can't, or maybe it is. Oh, thank you, never mind. You getting into the Jam board? Yeah, I mean, did you try? Yeah. Really? Is it not working? What? Good question. So the question is frustrated about what? So the frustration is in sharing your work. Is anybody able to get into the Jam board? Oh yeah, you can just swipe to the next, go to the, you can swipe to another board. I think that the QR code. Yeah. So the QR code probably goes to the same board, just swipe to the right. You'll find the next board. If you're on a phone, which most of you are. Yeah. But they're all adding into that first board that they're transferring. So you just. Ooh, somebody's an information addict. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's a good thing. Addict, maybe not, but certainly is good to be a hungry consumer of information. Someone asked about transparency. I'm going to talk about that for a second. I'm going to change the color to green when I talk about it so I can tell. Transparency is something you acquire with time, with working with the information that you have, and the more you learn about it, the more you understand what you need to know to proceed with your research. So transparency is completely relative to who you're speaking with, and who you're speaking with might be yourself in the future. What do you need to tell yourself about what you're doing so that when you're interrupted and then you need to go back to that project, you can do it with minimal re-up time. There's a better word for that I'm not thinking of. Ramp up? Because for you lecturers, when you're trying to do research, you're almost always interrupted. You're never able to get it done. I know from my own experience, I can't get my research done in the amount of time that I have, and then I have to drop everything and go teach. And the teaching can take a while. And then I gotta run back and finish my research, but I just got finished teaching. My head is in a completely different place. I go to my research area and I can't remember what I was doing. The amount of transparency you need to have is directly related to how complicated it is, how many decisions you've been making in the process. You need to document your decisions. Things like if you're going to go up and do a series of interviews, at some point you've decided on the technology to manage those interviews. What kind of recording device? Where will you get it? You make those decisions and you write that down. And that is a part of your data management plan. The plan includes, what do you think you're going to do to accomplish the task at hand? You might not do it exactly as you've defined. But if you try and imagine every step of the process that you need to go through to conduct your research, you are very, very much further along in the process when you get interrupted and you need to pick it up again. We have another question in here. Fear of transparency. So that's another one. Because if you're afraid of sharing your information, there's probably a good reason. You're probably unsure about what you're doing. Maybe you've never done it before. In this case, I think it's pretty safe to, well, it's not safe. It's all on how much do you trust your humankind, your fellow humans that will see this information. And if in there, in your documentation, you say, this is the first time I've ever done this, people will be more generous towards you. And if you see someone else who's just starting and trying to figure something out, people will be generous towards you. If you say, this is my first attempt or my third attempt, but I'm unsure on the process. It's still valid to share, even if you're not sure. That's what research is. We don't know until we're done. And in reality, academics never finish. So there's always another thing that you're going to do with that research. I mean, every good article ends with 3 more questions I should have done. Next time I start this research, I'm going to do this, this, and this. So that the fear of transparency is very real. And if it causes you to have too much anxiety, then don't do it, then don't share. But other people will be sharing around you, and you can start to model your behavior on their work. Do we have some more that are quickest way to search right information? So that is, how do you get right to the content that you need, right? Is that, I'm guessing that that's probably what that is. That is all about working with your librarians. That is about, functionally, that's about information literacy in terms of judging, is the source of this material valid? And that, my friends, is much more difficult now on the internet because there are a plethora of bad information sources. More bad sources than good sources. So peer-reviewed journals are always the best. That's how you find the quickest way is not quick, but you have to go to I recommend going to the sources of expertise in that area and finding out what they do. If you're a student. And if you're a faculty member or researcher that's more established, what you probably want to do is find your professional associations globally. And you already know who the journals are that you tend to trust. You've already plugged yourself into the slow dialogue of your profession. The deal now is to find, can you find other people's process? And then analyze for yourself if that process seems valid based on what you know at any given time, right? Do we have any more questions out there? Anybody want to just light up their mic and ask a question?
So now, at the Q&A session.
Oh, for.
Yes.
If there's questions, I will use that. But go ahead and have them ask.
Yeah, so any questions from the audience, because we proceed with a quick Q&A session for today's talk. Okay. Hi, I'm Shahali. I'm a lecturer here. So my question is, let's say sometimes when I tell people about my works, because I'm in information security and I am not into the technical, because usually when people see information security, people are more appreciate in terms of technicality. For example, when you heard about security, they will say like, hackers, viruses, networks, kind of thing. But there are people who actually look down into my areas. For example, like my areas is more on governance, security management, security more on the people, like awareness and training, which is, we know that the human elements is actually very important, and a human is basically a firewall, the strongest firewall, that because people is always the weakest link. So I don't know, that's part of just the challenges that I face when I go outside and I'm sharing about my research area. There are people who actually look down on me saying that, you are doing something like not really good, which is they actually recognize and appreciate more in terms of the technicalities rather than what I'm doing. So this just to share the challenges that I face.
Those challenges are real. And I feel for you because, well, because it's rude what they've done. And I've experienced similar things as well. I think one way you can handle, I know that it's not really a question, but I've got an idea for you in case it's of help, is to, when you're talking to people outside of your specific cohort, use different language. Don't say cybersecurity. Don't say information security. You say you study human behavior. And then it's like, oh, really? It's jargon. Our jargon separates us. And part of the issue I think you're having is that someone has decided what cybersecurity means, and it means technical things. Therefore, you're wrong. And you're not wrong. They've just made a decision based on a term that they've defined differently, unhelpfully. Anyone else? Anybody online?
Any questions?
We've got a couple in the Jamboard. There was a comment about technical issues like hide some of the variables in a code book. Now that would be interesting. Do you want to hide some of the variables because maybe you didn't use them? I can imagine that. Or would you include the variables that were in the study and proved useless? I would include them. Someone else may be able to use those variables. Now, the codebook itself needs to have much more description in it. So the codebook about data, for people who don't really study with data, this sounds a little like a social sciences data set or a data person. The codebook is going to include all the information you can get about every single question and all of the answers, not the data themselves, but what was the question? What are the possible answers? Maybe what's the distribution of the answers in a single variable analysis, like it's just a report, basically. And you can include comments, and in the comments you might say this variable proved to be unhelpful because we found people couldn't tell the difference between answer number 4 and answer number 6. They seem to be, we made a mistake, but it's in here anyway, in case you can do something with it. There's a whole area of study called missing analysis, where people study questions that weren't answered. If you can imagine that. So the data don't exist. And this is what people are studying. Who chose not to answer some of the questions in a survey? Now, if you share your data and you don't share the missing, those people can't do any research with your information. So you never really know when someone else can use information that you've provided. We got any more? I have some more Jamboard questions. We'll go on with the Jamboard questions. There's like one word, policy. The challenges for sharing your work is a policy problem. No, I don't know what aspect of policy is the problem. Is it that the policy is that you have to or that you can't? I'm not sure. But I can imagine different angles on policy as an obstacle to sharing your work. If that person wants to add more to the board, feel free, or just let it, if you're in the room, say something. We can talk about policy as an issue, because policy is one of those big, terribly fuzzy areas. Let's see anybody here answering. If it was someone online, go into the Zoom chat and see if there's some, if you want to speak up. Someone asked a really good question. Not sure which platform. We'll come back to the policy question if that person steps forward, but for now, not sure which platform and where to share. This is where you go, again, you go to your librarians, you go to your research support office, and you say, I'm exploring platforms, I don't know where to start. There are so many platforms. The Open Science toolkit is one that you might appreciate using, especially if you're a beginner. I may have a link to that on the slides, that Open Science toolkit. Well, anyway, Open Science Toolkit, Open Science Framework. These are tools meant for individuals to jump in and start playing with them and see how can you structure this tool online to be open. I think there was someone here who does semantic analysis. I heard about it this morning. There was some area that does semantic. So there's a faculty member at my campus who does semantic analysis, and my faculty member is in the faculty of psychology. She studies how people understand words. And if there was faculty here who work in semantic analysis, you've got a natural partner in my faculty member named Julia Strand. Julia does all of her work in the Open Science Framework, OSF. And she teaches her classes in OSF as well. She teaches her classes to do open science, and she uses all the jargon. She defines it very rigorously for her purposes. Her purposes include a very, very defined research protocol that happens beforehand and that the students are held to at the end. Nothing must change. You do exactly what you said you were going to do because that's how it works in her discipline. It's not how it works in my discipline. You start off with a question and you morph that question until you get to the thing you think you wanted to get at. That is mushy, that's messy, and it's really hard to document. Let's say you're doing a semantic analysis and you follow Julia Strand's protocols. She's made everything public, including her data. She can make her data public because she's completely anonymized them. There's no connection between her subject matter and the subjects. Julia Strand. So you want to look for Julia Strand at carleton.edu. She's got YouTube videos out there. She's also hilarious. So that's fun. Do we have any new questions in the room? No new questions in the room. Any new questions in Zoom?
Is any questions from this room?
Oh, we got some new on the jam board. Let's talk about, I'm overthinking after I share the work, will people accept it or criticize it and so forth? Did I answer that one? I don't think so. If you're afraid that you're going to be criticized after you open it and share it, I think I did kind of talk about that in a different way, which was if it's too much, if you're having too much anxiety about it, don't do it. Research should not cause physical or emotional harm. It never should. That means you're doing your own research unethically against yourself. So one of the things that you can do is that's a personal situation in which you might examine what is it about your anxiety. If you did something improperly, might you want to know what it is? You can switch it out to say, instead of this is the truth of whatever your research is, instead you say, I found this, I think it means this. Would someone like to have a conversation with me about this so that I can feel sure of my conclusion? Right? That's showing humility in the process. It is also a chance for someone to probably be bullied. And in that case, it's the same with bullies everywhere. Do your best to avoid them. Okay, the security of the data. Security of data is an interesting question in that if you're not sure about the data and that the sharing, the ways in which you might share it are that you don't want to, you're not sure if it's safe to reveal the data, then don't. It's better to be cautious, but you can always reveal your metadata. Metadata never reveal information about an individual. Metadata are, what were the questions you asked? What were the samples of petri dishes you looked at? What were the animal protocols you managed when studying rat behavior? What happened in the background that produced the data that you're not sharing? What are all the possible answers that could have happened? Okay? Even that is of use. Even if that is helpful. So the security of the data, that's where you might want to go to a data security expert. And eventually Malaysia will begin to have more of them. is developing them. I know I predict there are people here, the cybersecurity people here should be able to help you. But they have a job, so taking too much of people's time is a challenge. But those are growing pains that are going on globally. It's not, none of your questions here are unique to Malaysia. Not a one, not Malaysia, not IIUM. These are generic problems that the world is having, that individuals are having everywhere. So you're among friends, I would say. If you don't think your work is good enough, then you might consider again using the open platform to ask for support. And in which case you might find, as I'm finding, there's a great deal of very deep, very fine experience at this institution. And when I came in, people were saying, we're just barely getting started. And I'm thinking, you guys are really far along. Barely getting started. You wouldn't have any repositories, you wouldn't have any systems, you wouldn't have, but you've got all kinds of people who've thought about this very, very deeply. The step now is to get people to integrate and start using the skills, start driving the cars so that we can find out these prototypes, what needs to be changed. Well, I don't want my colleagues to see my messy work. Well, might you want to tidy up? Or you write an intro piece that says, these are my raw notes. This is very messy. And I'm sharing it anyway. Get used to it. That's what I would do. In fact, that's what I've done. Copyright issue. That one is challenging because I've heard a lot of conversation about copyright. And I know the library has absorbed copyright activities, but I don't know what that means. Can anyone here help me understand what does it mean to have the library do copyright? No one?
Good evening, Paula.
Where? Online.
My name is Ini. I'm at the Zoom.
Oh, yes.
Okay, about the copyright. Oh, okay. So what the library contributing to the university is that we request application of copyright to the Malaysian, to the MyIPO, the Intellectual Property Corporation of Malaysia. So we send researchers work, okay? If researchers would like to copyright their work, okay, so we will send the work to the Malaysian, to the Intellectual Property Corporation of Malaysia, and then MyIPO will provide a certificate, notification to the work, the researchers' work. So that's what library contributing to the university, ma'am. Hope it helps.
Yes, that's very helpful. So it's at the end, basically. Is that what am I understanding that right? After the articles are published, then you managed to get copyright for those people?
Okay, the article is different. Okay, this one is more to protect the researchers. For example, coding. They want to protect the coding. So they will send to the library. So library will process we will fill up a form, and then we will send to the MyIPO with the form, with the coding, and then MyIPO will give a certificate and notification to protect the coding. For
Protected
example,
from what?
From being infringement, from being infringed by other person. So if other person would like to use the coding, for example, okay, they must give credit to the researcher, to the owner.
Do you use Creative Commons licensing?
That one is different. The Creative Commons licensing is different. This one is the copyright under Intellectual Property Corporation of Malaysia. So they will protect. They give service to protect the copyright, the patent, the trademarks. So copyright is one of it, ma'am.
Thank you. Well, I can see where if the problem with copyright is slowing things down, I can certainly see where that would be the case. It sounds like there may be cultural issues surrounding sharing that lead to the mentality that if somebody, it's an obstacle to have to find somebody to ask them, may I use your code? And they probably just want to have a look and see, how did you do that? Coding takes an stunning amount of time, of course. But if you write in your code who you are and that you wrote all this code, it's on the person who takes it that they're behaving unethically. And then it's a social situation in which the people around them say, did you write that? And if they say they did, and then now society needs to participate and recognize that, no, actually, I don't think you did. If in fact your material is managed publicly, it's a matter of Google searching for some snippet of code to say, your code, I found some just exactly like it over here in this open repository, and it was published in 2020, and you said you did this in 2024, exactly the same? Really? I think that your work is actually her work. And she should get credit. Now, if the value structure of the society is such that you say, we need to cite data, which I've emphasized earlier, must cite your data sources. If you're using code, you must cite your code sources. And that needs to happen in the classrooms. That needs to happen in information literacy workshopping with the libraries. It needs to happen, it needs to be reiterated in all paper writing situations where someone is getting information from somebody else, right? When do you cite sources? How do you cite sources? This has been library bread and butter, which is an American phrase. I guess here would be rice and chicken. You're gonna have, it's the mainstay of what happens in education, is telling students how to participate in the academic conversation ethically by sharing whose stuff you're using. You can do this with images, with metadata. You can embed metadata in the image, in addition to including the URL. So if you're doing a slideshow and you grab an image off the internet, you really should tell people where you got it. Where did that image come from? Give those people credit. And then if you use it, Creative Commons is incredibly easy. Once you understand it, it's a simple way to add a little tiny image to your slide deck or to your show or to your file or to your document that says exactly how you want people to treat your information. It's a series of licenses. That's creativecommons.org, but it's a series of licenses that define exactly how you want to use it. I use International License 4.0. I try to put it on everything I do. Creative Commons International License 4.0 means anybody can use anything that I've produced. Go ahead, please. I want this information out there. This isn't about me. This is about society. I may have created this piece, but I took pieces from other people. I gave them credit. What I want you to do is use it for good, not for evil. I want you to share what you're doing as well. International License 4.0 says if you use my stuff, then you need to make your stuff public too. And that's just that's a social norm that's being propagated person to person to person. Two more Jamboard questions. I don't know. I lost the screen. Or anybody in the room wants anything, or anyone in Zoom, certainly welcome. Oh, the AI question. If an AI could learn and make code, which has already happened, there's already AI code or AI written code, which is indicated in this question. What's going to happen to existing coders? Well, existing coders, we still need human brains. Existing coders won't just go away. Someone's going to need to manage. This is like all the scary futuristic movies. There's the one where we've had an apocalypse because the robots took over. And then there's the one where the future is amazing and there's still issues, but it's amazing. Undoubtedly, we'll have a little of everything. But I think that coders need to be involved in AI coding from the start. We need to have humans involved in that and have conversations with the professionals in your area. There are professional organizations that are definitely talking about this globally. Well, there's a question, what's Creative Commons licensing? I think you're gonna have to Google that and see if you can.
Is it fine?
Because that's gonna take a little while. How open science is related with knowledge management. Knowledge management and open science are siblings. They're very, very close. They're in the same family. And you might even say that knowledge management is the big window and open science is the section that focuses on research. Everything is knowledge management. If you don't manage your information, try thinking about these words instead of thinking of them in the jargon that they are. Think of them as exactly what they sound like. Managing knowledge. Wow, that's fuzzy. That's tough. But there are people here who, I listened to a brilliant talk this morning about the definition of knowledge management. She nailed it. It was the most succinct, beautiful conversation of what is knowledge management that I've heard. And so you've got those resources here. Now, knowledge management for an individual is how do you handle the information that you're storing? How are you sorting through your brain to find that piece of information? Where did I put that? Phone number. I took 17 pictures and then they were on my phone and my phone broke. So they're in the cloud. Which cloud? Is it the cloud before that? Or is it which phone did I take those? All of that knowledge management is finding your stuff, organizing your stuff, having a scheme for how you're cataloging. Yeah, cataloging your own material. Listen to librarians is what I have to say about that. Limited time to document is real. That's definitely a real problem. And to me, that needs to be valued in whatever reward structure you're in. If you're a student and you're in a class and if the class is very specifically a research class, you probably need to document what you're doing. You probably are documenting what you're doing by different assignments within the course in a research methods course. And for faculty, time to document is you're probably under a great deal of pressure to publish. You don't have time to publish. And that means that the institution needs to find ways to reward the effort of documentation and sharing. And that's going to have to come from the conversations from your faculty representatives, your lecturer representatives. Changing the reward structure is what's going to make that function. Should libraries have a dedicated RDM movement unit? Possibly, or it could be anywhere. RDM, it depends on, every institution is going to have a different sense of that, I think. And if the library is a place that people would go to get that information, then you might begin with one person. And then if that person is overwhelmed, they split. Then you start, then you get a team. You could also embed RDM in all of the research support organizations on campus that already exist. Because RDM is research. Right, it's a piece of research. So this means you could do more with less by partnering across disciplines, by addressing this from within the research units. I think we covered them all. Yeah. Yeah, I hope I've been helpful, but we'll see.
Okay, I just want to ask you one question.
Mhm.
Can you consider ResearchGate as one of the platform for open science?
If ResearchGate is a platform for open science, it's a part of the platform, certainly, because it's a place where people network. And, but it typically includes, well, it includes all kinds of things, but typically includes the articles. Now, if you've submitted your article to a prestigious journal that doesn't let you share, you can't put it in ResearchGate or academia.edu. And in those cases, what I recommend is to have a preprint. Preprints make sense, or present at a conference and have that paper included. Put your data in a public repository and use a DOI for your data, and link to the DOI in your. You can put your data, you can put your article in that very prestigious journal, but make it also available elsewhere. And then find ways to encourage your library to get rid of the proprietary licensing. Because you can spend that money better elsewhere. The library can spend that money better elsewhere, probably. I have strong opinions about who owns the information when it goes into a journal that locks it up. And I think that's not helping humankind.
Do you have any?
I am so happy to be here, and I'm really pleased to have had this opportunity to converse with everyone, to see your questions, to hear a few, and have deeper conversations with individuals earlier in the day. I very much appreciate what you're doing here in your beautiful, beautiful campus. So thank you for having me.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we have finally come to the end part of this ELIS Industrial Talk Series. So, thank you, Prof, for a very concise, informative explanation on what is open in the open science. Okay, so I hope everyone in this hall and even who joined us in Zoom via Zoom can benefit from the talk. So I think I will pass this floor to back to MC. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saada. Before we move on to the next agenda, I would like to invite the participants online in Zoom to switch on your camera so that we could have some photography session online. Dr. Saada, you may join the photography session.
It's so funny. People don't even know but I'm seeing other people because it's a Zoom room. Yes. One of my colleagues is in that same room. What are they doing together?
Is everyone ready? To switch on your camera.
Click on participants, there you go.
We will wait until everyone ready for the photography session. To switch on your camera.
Sorry, no camera.
Control PRTSC. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you, everyone.
All of them.
Okay, move on to the next agenda. I would like to invite Professor Dr. Abdul Rahman Ahlan, the Dean of KICT, accompanied by Dr. Zahida Zulkifli, the Head of Department of Library and Information Science, to come to the front for the token giving ceremony. Please welcome.
And then this is from this is from our computer. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Sorry, there's a bento in your like bento. Where is the Malaysian way?
Respected guests, ladies and gentlemen, this marks the end of the Department of Library and Information Science Industrial Talk series on what is open about open science. I would like to take this opportunity to express our deepest gratitude to all the honorable guests for your willingness to be here today. We would like to also apologize for any shortcomings we have throughout this program. Let us recite Tasbih Kifarah and Suratul Ans. We hope to see all of you again in the next event. To all respected guests, let's have a group photography session for this memorable moment outside. And after that, all VIPs are invited for some refreshments after this at the VIP lounge afterwards. Thank you and wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamullahi alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Hello, hello. Dah boleh, dah stop dah.